Hi, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing a layout for Peartree Cutfiles, and I'm using one of the new files from the May release, and it's called Time to Bloom, and it's absolutely stunning. There it is on my mat there. Pre-warning, this layout is completely different for me, not my usual style at all, but I saw this cut file in the release and it's just absolutely stunning. I just love everything about it. Marie's made a few files now that have kind of got this pocket watch design on, and I'm really drawn to all of them, and they're all on my list to use, but this one in particular just really jumped out at me. Very hard to use it and stick to my normal style, so I just let myself go really and did what I wanted with it, and I really do love how it's turned out. It's just completely not my normal style though. So I've cut it onto white smooth cardstock. I haven't bothered with gesso, mainly because my gesso decided to disappear on me. I opened the pot the other day and it was empty. And it wasn't empty last time I put the lid on, so I'm not too sure what's happened there, but it has evaporated into thin air. So no gesso on this, and I'm going in directly with Shimmerz Paints. So that one there I'm using, the brown, is called Chocolate and Diamonds, and it's an Inklingz. So it's a hard paint that you have to spray water into to activate it. And then you just sort of give it a stir in a few minutes and you get some paint, exactly the same as I've done with this one. So this pink one here is another Inklingz, and it's called Beets Me, and it's a lovely pink, and all of these Inklingz have got a lovely amount of shimmer in, and I'm not really adding any water, so full shimmer effect on this layout. That the shimmer doesn't get watered down at all, so it turns out really, really sparkly and pretty. So I'm going to use that pink to do all of the flowers. I'm going to skip through a lot of the painting because otherwise this video would be quite long and quite repetitive because there's a lot to paint. So this one here is a green. It's a Shimmerz original, so it's a wet paint, so you don't need to add water or anything like that to it, and it's called Celery. It's my favourite shade of Shimmerz green. I've transferred it to a bit of packaging, and I have added a slight amount of water just to make it a bit easier to go on the cut file because it is quite a thick paint. Sorry, my cat's just decided to join me in the room, scared the life out of me. So there you go, I've skipped through most of the painting there. The chain at the top of the watch and the clock hands for the centre, I've used a Cosmic Shimmer Iridescent Watercolour paint in silver because I don't actually have a silver Shimmerz, so I need to add one of those to my collection. But I've painted the entire cut file. I've not included any of the kind of the middle bits, the negative bits, except the outline of the pocket watch. I just felt like it needed something solid to it, so I've painted those bits as well, and I'm going to pop those back in. But for now I've stuck the whole cut file down onto vellum. I wanted to back it onto something, but I didn't want to use patterned paper because I just wanted the cut file itself to sing with that mixed media paint on it. I didn't really want busy pattern papers behind it. So I've gone with vellum because it gives a really lovely soft look to it. And you can still kind of see the background paper behind it, but not really, it's nice and clouded. So those negative pieces for the outline of the watch I'm propping up onto adhesive craft foam to bring a bit of dimension in, because I'm not going to be able to really sort of realistically stick the whole file down because it's quite a thin file and it would take a lifetime to add thin strips of craft foam behind all of that. I've decided to stick the whole thing flat, and I'm going to raise up the pocket watch sections. So we'll see I add 4 bits in to make kind of the face of the pocket watch. And after I finished this layout, I looked back at it and realised I didn't do the top part, kind of like the handle or whatever you would call that bit. So I had to rummage through my bin and find the bits because I had thrown them away. So I do add those back in right at the very end. But it took me right up until I was photographing the layout to realise that I hadn't actually included those, and it did kind of need it. So I've just popped some glossy accents on the back, mainly behind where I've stuck those pieces back in so you can't see it. And then I've just done the centre of all the flowers and kind of where there was a larger area so that you can't see the adhesive through. And I've stuck that down to my background, and I'm just raising the clock hands up onto some thin strips of foam. Now this background paper I'm using, it's not branded or anything, it's from a shop called The Range, and they sell some craft supplies. It's not a craft shop, they just have a craft section. And it was kind of like a vintage florally patterned paper, patterned paper pad, and I really liked this one. It was kind of like a creamy beige colour, but it looked quite vintage, and I thought that this cut file had a very vintage look to it, so I thought it worked perfectly. So again, no white cardstock. I think this is like the 4th or 5th layout in a row now I've made where I haven't used white cardstock, which is really unlike me because I am very much a white cardstock background kind of girl, and I seem to be avoiding it lately, which is good because I tried to do that last year as my New Year's resolution, but it didn't work. So I didn't bother setting it as this year's New Year's resolution, and it seems to be happening this year. So I'm just going with the flow for now. So I matted my photo on a couple of layers of patterned papers. They're both wood grain, but different coloured wood grains, so it just gives a bit of a different effect. I felt like it needed something behind it, but again, I didn't really want to bring in loads of busy pattern papers, so those wood grain ones worked quite well. And I've distressed the edges of both of those with a distressing tool, and then I'm going to raise that up on foam. So I do like a lot of dimension to my layouts, and obviously with this cut file being stuck down flat, I've had to build the dimension where I can. So my photo has got a nice layer of foam behind it, and I'm going to stick it over on the right there. Now I move on to embellishing. I don't want to embellish this layout too much because I want that cut file to be the main sort of feature along with my photo, but I do feel like it needs something. So I've got these flowers, this ephemera pack from the new Pink Fresh Studio Keeping It Real collection. I'm yet to use them. I keep getting them out and trying to put them on layouts, and they just come back off. I'm not really that keen on them. I don't know what it is. I think it's because they're quite pastel-y. The colours are just not me. So they do keep coming out and they keep going back away again, but I do manage to get a couple on this layout, so I feel better for using some. But they weren't really the look I was going for again for this layout. So I reached into my stash, and I've got these paper flowers that I've had for ages, probably about 4 years. And I've never really used them up until recently, and I think this is the 3rd layout in the last month where I've used them. So I don't usually do florals for my layouts because I scrap photos of my little boy and he's not very flowery. Like, he's a typical boyish boy, dirt, construction vehicles, monster trucks, that sort of thing. So flowers have never worked. But I was getting a bit frustrated with buying collections and not being able to use a lot of it because it's all flowers. So this year I did decide I was just going to embrace it and just go with it. And I'm actually finding it really liberating and really enjoying it. So obviously this is a photo of my little boy, but it is very far from a masculine layout. It's very girly actually. It's probably the most girliest layout I've ever made, but I really do love it. So I felt like I could get away with these flowers on this one. So I've pierced some holes in my background paper because these flowers have wire on them, and then I've threaded them through and kind of stuck them down with tape at the back. And then I've painted them with the same Shimmerz paint, that Beets Me Inklingz. And obviously that makes them nice and shimmery. And then I've also got some leaves. They are fabric leaves that I've poked holes and pushed through as well, just to finish that cluster off. And then I still felt like the layout needed something else. The florals weren't really working at the top, but it needed something. So I pulled out these butterflies. Now I love this paper. It's a Cocoa Vanilla Studio one. I think it's from Unforgettable, maybe. It's one of the older collections, but I absolutely love it. So I fussy cut a few of those. I think I do 3 or 4 in total. I think I did 4, but one of them was grey and it wasn't really working, so I swapped it out for a purple one. And I position those, and it just adds a little bit more to the top section of that layout without overcrowding it, and I think it looks really pretty with those butterflies, so I'm really glad I thought to use those. But at this point I was kind of feeling like my layout needed something more, and I quite often add a border to my background, but it wasn't really going to work with this layout, wasn't going to be sort of in keeping with the kind of vintage style. So instead I've pulled out a couple of stamps. This one is kind of a series of clock faces, and I've got another one that's got some cursive script on it. And I'm using a distress ink in pumice stone, which is kind of like a greyish khaki colour. It's a bit of a weird colour, but it works perfectly with this layout. And I'm just going all the way around the edge, stamping faint in some areas, and then I'm going a bit heavier in other areas to make sure some of those clock faces are visible. And I'm overlapping them all and making it really messy, but it doesn't matter because it's quite faint. It's sort of there for the detail rather than the actual image itself. But I really do love how that looks. And then I'm coming in with the scripty stamp and doing exactly the same thing. And that kind of gives it a border without giving it a border, if that makes sense. It adds some detail to that edge, so it satisfies my need for something there, but it's still quite subtle, so I really like how that looks. So once I finish that, I come back to those pink fresh florals. I'm still not happy with them, so I just have a bit more of a play, and I ditch the darker pinkish purple one, and then actually find that the three I've got there looked okay. The colours worked, they weren't too overpowering, but they just added a little bit of something around my photo. So they got glued down, so I'm finally happy that I've actually managed to use some of those. I think I'm going to end up either stashing those or giving them away because they're just, I don't know, I just don't reach for them enough. So now I'm moving on to my title. I've pulled out these thickers. They are from a previous Vicky Boutin collection. I'm trying to think which one, but can't. I think it might have been Let's Wander, but I absolutely love them and they work really well. Normally I like to paint them in kind of like an ombre effect, but I take a while on this one to decide on placement for my title. I wanted it to be Time is Precious, but I just could not fit it in anywhere where I was happy. So I did skip through the video because I spent a good 10 minutes rearranging and moving my title around until I settled on this position. And then I've pulled out the Shimmerz Beets Me again, and I'm just adding a little bit to each layer and using my finger just to smudge it around, just to make it a little bit patchy and kind of messy to go with the stamping on the background. I didn't want it to be too perfect. And then the gap underneath that was perfect for that butterfly, so I'd had to remove the butterfly to add the title in, but I'd left a gap underneath so I could slot it back in. And then this is the next day when I'd realised that I'd missed those bits out and I'd rummaged through my bin and found them. So I just come back to stick those down, which worked out kind of perfectly actually, because my Peartree pieces arrived that day. So I was able to get those on my layout as well. So if you're not aware, Peartree Cutfiles now make Peartree pieces and Peartree stencils, and they're both absolutely stunning. So I've ordered the pieces in several colours and I'll show you them in a minute. So there they all are, absolutely stunning. So we've got packs of hearts and a pack of stars. So I'm just showing you a couple of the colours here. You've got, these are felt pieces with, some of them got glitter in. There's also packs with, you've got wood veneer, MDF and cork. So they are going to go with loads and loads of layouts. And I'm absolutely thrilled that they arrived in time for me to just add a few to this layout. So I've gone with the pink felt hearts. So I've added a glitter one and a normal felt one to the bottom there. And I've added a felt one under my title. And then I was just checking how many glitter ones I had left because I didn't want to use them all up because they're so pretty. I put them away and then decided, no, don't stash them, don't hoard them, put one on. So I've added another glitter heart under my title there. And I felt like I wanted to add a little bit more around the edge of my page. So I've pulled out a Distress Oxide in Picked Raspberry, and I'm just using a blending brush to go all around the edge of the page, adding just a little hint of colour. Not too much because I didn't want to kind of run the pink with the pumice stone stamping because that was a distress ink, so I was a bit worried that might start smudging, but I just wanted to add a little bit of colour to the outside. And that's my layout finished. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this layout. It is obviously totally different to my normal style, but I just absolutely loved this cut file and needed to get it onto a page pretty quick, just to satisfy my need to use it. So thank you very much for joining me. In the description box below, I shall pop a link down to the cut file in the shop and also to the Peartree Cutfiles Facebook group. If you're not already in the group, I do recommend joining. We have loads of fun. We have freebies every week and also our monthly pair drop crops. So lots of fun to be had there. So like I said, I'll pop those links in the description box. So until next time, I shall say goodbye and leave you with the close-ups.